the intimate photo on my guest's phone, a story of absolute betrayal. Part 1, an act of kindness. They say that no good deed goes unpunished, but I never truly understood the weight of that phrase until my entire life was turned upside down over the course of 4 agonizing days. It all started on a completely ordinary Tuesday. It was my day off from work, and my wife and I were trying to do what we thought was the right thing. About a month prior, a longtime mutual friend of ours, let's call him Hayden, had been abruptly kicked out of his house by his girlfriend. According to him, he hadn't done anything wrong. She had just suddenly decided she wanted him gone. For weeks, he had been drifting from hotel to hotel, wasting money he didn't have. My wife and I talked it over. We had a decent apartment with a spare room, and we hated seeing someone we'd known for years struggle. We offered to let him stay with us for a few weeks until he could get back on his feet and find a place of his own. We wanted to be a safe harbor for him. Instead, we let a wolf right through our front door. That evening, Hayden and I were sitting on the living room couch. We were doing what guys normally do, drinking a few beers, catching up, and watching old reruns of The Twilight Zone on the DVR. It felt like a completely relaxed, normal night. But looking back, the atmosphere was already shifting into something deeply unsettling. Eventually, Hayden ran out of beer. He got up from the couch and headed down the hallway into the kitchen to grab another bottle from the fridge. When he stood up, he casually tossed his phone face down onto the cushions right next to me. Now, I am not the type of person who snoops. I value privacy, and I've never been paranoid. But for some inexplicable reason, maybe it was gut intuition, maybe it was just a strange impulse, I reached out and picked up his phone. The screen was still active. He hadn't locked it before walking away. I turned it over, and my breath instantly caught in my throat. My heart did a violent, sickening flip. Hayden had been looking at a photo, a private, intimate photo of a woman, and as I stared at the screen, a wave of cold dread washed over me because I was almost entirely certain that the woman in the picture was my wife. Part 2, the seed of doubt. I only had a fraction of a second to look at it before panic set in. From what I could gather in that brief, terrifying moment, it was a photo of a woman lying down, wearing an open shirt. The face wasn't visible in the frame, but the physical traits matched my wife perfectly. A sickening feeling pool in the bottom of my stomach. The sheer discomfort of realizing that my friend was sitting right next to me on my couch, secretly browsing highly personal, compromising images of my wife, was paralyzing. Hearing his footsteps returning from the kitchen, I quickly panicked. I scrambled to put the phone back exactly where he had left it, making sure to hit the side button to lock the screen so he wouldn't know I had seen anything. When he walked back into the living room, cracking open his fresh beer, I couldn't even look him in the eye. I mumbled an excuse about needing to rest, stood up, and hurried straight into my bedroom. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands trembling as I tried to process what had just happened. My mind was a chaotic storm of questions. Where did he get that photo? Was it actually her? Is there something going on behind my back in my own home? I knew I couldn't just launch into wild accusations. Throwing around claims like that without 100% certainty could destroy a marriage and a friendship instantly. I needed absolute proof. I needed to see that image again, but I had no idea how I was going to manage it. I checked the time. My wife was scheduled to be home from her shift in a little under 2 hours. Meanwhile, Hayden had retreated to the spare room to work on something. The silence in the apartment felt heavier than ever. To test the waters, I decided to send my wife a completely mundane text message just to see how she would respond. I didn't mention anything about Hayden or the phone. I just wanted to hear from her, to feel some sense of normalcy. But the minutes ticked by, and she didn't reply. Part 3, the spiral. By the time an hour had passed, the anxiety was clawing at my chest. I needed a way to get a second look at Hayden's phone. I racked my brain for an excuse, and finally I came up with a classic trick. I went to his room, knocked on the door, and told him I couldn't find my phone anywhere in the house. I asked if he could use his phone to call mine. Immediately, his behavior made my suspicions skyrocket. He looked visibly hesitant. He didn't want to hand the device over or even pull it out right away. Instead of passing me the phone, he guarded it closely and said, "Tell you what, just walk around the apartment and listen for it, and I'll keep dialing your number from here until you find it." I didn't want to push too hard and make him realize I was onto him, so I forced a fake smile, agreed, and walked out. A moment later, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I waited a few seconds, called out that I had found it under a cushion, and retreated back to my room. The fact that he was so fiercely protective of his phone only cemented the terrifying reality that he was hiding something dark. Shortly after, Hayden left the apartment to head to his evening job. 10 minutes later, my wife finally walked through the front door. I looked at her, searching her face for any sign of guilt or hidden secrets. Before I could even ask her why she hadn't responded to my text, she sighed and looked frustrated. "I am so annoyed," she said, putting her bags down. "I completely forgot my phone and left it at my desk at work today." When she said those words, my head started spinning at light speed. She left her phone at work, conveniently on the exact day. I see an intimate photo of her on my guest's phone. The timing felt completely terrifying. Was this a calculated move? Was she trying to prevent me from looking through her devices? I tried to stay completely calm. I didn't want to give anything away. To verify her story, I waited until she stepped away, took out my phone and dialed her number. It rang and rang for the full 30 seconds before going to voicemail. If it had been turned off or dead, it would have gone straight to voicemail. It was indeed ringing somewhere out there, presumably on her desk at work. Later that evening, she told me she was heading out to the gym for an hour. While she was gone, the isolation of the empty apartment felt suffocating. I felt a profound sense of guilt just for doubting her. I loved this woman with everything I had. We had been together for 5 years, built a life together, and the thought of losing her or being betrayed by her was tearing me apart inside. The stress was triggering a massive, blinding headache. When my wife finally returned from the gym, she found me lying in the dark bedroom. She was incredibly sweet, turning off the lights, sitting on the edge of the bed, and gently kissing my forehead. She asked if I needed anything, completely unaware of the emotional storm raging inside my skull. I told her I was just stressed about work, and eventually, exhaustion took over and I drifted into a restless sleep. Part 4. Investigating in the dark. I woke up in the dead of night, unable to sleep. The house was dead quiet. I quietly slipped out of bed and walked into the living room. As I looked toward the balcony, I saw the silhouette of Hayden standing outside, having a late-night smoke. The anger flared up in my chest again. I wanted to march out there and demand answers, but I forced myself to maintain my composure. I stepped out onto the balcony, making casual small talk as the cold night air hit us. After a few moments of empty conversation, I decided to probe a little bit. I looked at him and asked, "Hey man, what exactly happened with your girlfriend? Why did she really kick you out?" He didn't even look at me. He just shrugged, blew out a cloud of smoke, and said with complete indifference, "Like I told you before, dude, I'm really not sure. She just did. You know, I didn't do anything wrong." The tone of his voice gave him away completely. It was that classic, defensive, dismissive tone people use when they get caught red-handed and try to play it off with a hollow, nothing. I knew right then, with absolute certainty, that Hayden was a liar. The next morning, I left early for the gym and then headed straight to work. While at my desk, I decided to use some advice I had gathered online. I logged into our cellular service provider account to pull up the detailed text message logs for our plan. It felt like an invasion of privacy, and I hated myself for doing it, but I had to know the truth. When the logs finally loaded, I held my breath and scanned the numbers. There were multiple messages exchanged between my wife and me, her mother and her friends. And then there it was, a log of texts between my wife and Hayden. My heart sank, but as I looked closer at the timestamps, I realized something. The messages they exchanged were completely benign group-style notifications. She had sent a text asking if he wanted her to pick up anything for dinner, a message she had broadcasted to both him and me simultaneously. There were no late-night secret threads, no hidden, ongoing digital affair. A tiny glimmer of hope sparked in my chest. If they weren't secretly texting, then where did that photo come from? Part 5, the confrontation. When my shift finally ended, I drove home with a fierce determination. I was done sneaking around. I was going to man up and confront Hayden directly. I walked through the front door of our apartment, dropped my keys, and marched straight toward the spare room. As I passed the bathroom, I heard the sound of the shower running. Hayden was inside, getting ready for his shift. I stepped into his temporary bedroom, and my eyes locked onto his bed. Right there, sitting entirely unprotected next to his jacket and travel bag, was his phone. This was my moment. There was no turning back. I snatched up the device. It was protected by a passcode, but it didn't take long to break. I tried standard sequences like 1234 and its reverse, and on the fourth attempt, I tried the year of his birth. The screen clicked open. My hands shook as I opened his photo gallery. I scrolled past ordinary pictures, random screenshots, and then suddenly there it was. The air left my lungs. Seeing it clearly, with no rush and no panic, I recognized it instantly. I knew the specific shirt. I recognized the background of the room. It was a private photo that my wife had taken of herself right here in our own apartment. It was her, and it was sitting in his personal gallery. An uncontrollable, blinding rage took over. I marched out of the room, strode up to the bathroom door, and began slamming my fists against the wood like a lunatic. I screamed his name at the top of my lungs, demanding that he get out immediately. The shower abruptly cut off. Hayden yelled back, sounding panicked and confused. "What the fuck do you want, man? I'm trying to get ready for work. Open the damn door right now," I roared. The lock turned and the door swung open. Hayden stood there, pulling up his pants, looking startled. "What is your problem?" I stepped right into his face, holding up my hands. "Why the hell do you have a private, intimate picture of my wife on your phone?" His eyes went wide, completely devoid of color. He froze, his mouth opening and closing as he began to stammer incoherently. He held his hands up in a defensive gesture, trying to back away from me. Wait, just calm down. Let me explain. I know you're mad." "No kidding, I'm mad," I screamed, cutting him off. "Did my wife send you this? Tell me the truth." No, she didn't." He yelled back, desperately trying to protect himself from what looked like an imminent physical altercation. And then the real, disgusting truth came out. Hayden hadn't received the photo from my wife. He had stolen it. He explained, trembling, that a few days prior, when I had left my own phone unattended on the counter, he had gone through my device. He found the private photo my wife had sent me, shared it to his own number via an cloud sharing link, and then carefully deleted the outgoing message thread from my phone so I would never notice. I was completely disgusted. This man, whom we had welcomed into our home out of pure charity, had violated our privacy, stolen from me, and compromised my wife. I grabbed his phone, deleted the image entirely from his gallery and his cloud trash, and looked him dead in the eye. "Get your things and get out of my house," I said, my voice dangerously low. "If I ever see your face near this apartment or near my wife again, you will deeply regret it. Move." He didn't argue. He threw his clothes into his bag, apologizing profusely over and over again, but I didn't hear a word of it. Within 5 minutes, he slammed the front door behind him and was gone. Part 6, Healing and Moving Forward. 45 minutes later, my wife returned home from work. She looked exhausted, carrying her dead phone in her hand. I walked up to her, took a deep breath, and calmly asked her to sit down with me in the living room. She plugged her phone into the wall, sat on the couch, and looked at me with a stern, confused expression. I didn't dance around the subject. I looked right at her and said, "Hayden had a private photo of you on his phone." Her face instantly morphed into absolute shock and horror. "What?" she gasped. I laid out the entire story. I told her how I had first spotted it, the agony of the last 2 days, my fears that she was hiding something from me, and finally, Hayden's confession about breaking into my phone and stealing the image. As the realization hit her, the anger and violation took over her expression. She looked like she wanted to cry, and seeing her in that state made the tears spill over my own eyes. The immense emotional roller coaster of the past 48 hours, the suspicion, The fear of losing my marriage, the boiling rage, all came pouring out of me. We held each other tightly on that couch. She squeezed me with everything she had, reassuring me that I was a wonderful husband and reminding me of how much we had overcome together in our past. It was an incredibly cathartic, heavy cry for both of us. The relief that my wife was entirely innocent was beautiful, but the anger toward the person who violated us remained a burning fire. The next day, I decided to do some investigating. I drove over to Hayden's ex-girlfriend's house. I knocked on her door and openly explained what had just transpired at our apartment. She wasn't even surprised. She looked at me with deep disgust and revealed the real reason she had kicked him out. He had been actively cheating on her with multiple people. She aired out a long list of toxic behavior she had put up with, confirming that Hayden was a manipulative, deeply troubled individual. When I returned home, my wife showed me her phone. Hayden had been flooding her with dozens of incoherent, desperate text messages every 10 minutes, begging for forgiveness, clearly intoxicated and unraveling. I had received similar texts on my phone, all of which I ignored, but within a few hours, his tone shifted from pathetic apologies to something far more sinister. He showed up outside our apartment building, completely unannounced, yelling and demanding to be let in. When we refused, he began sending aggressive, threatening messages to our phones. I didn't do anything illegal. One text read, "Don't you dare tell anyone about this, or I will come back and personally mess you up." That was the final straw. We had tried to handle the situation like civilized adults, but he chose to escalate it into harassment and safety threats. My wife was terrified that he would try to act on his violent words, so I stayed by her side the entire weekend, keeping our doors locked tight. We immediately took the threatening messages and the evidence of the stolen digital property to a local law office and the local police precinct. We are now officially pressing harassment charges and pursuing legal action for the theft of our private data. It has been an incredibly exhausting, traumatic journey, but it taught me a valuable lesson. True loyalty and safety aren't found in the people who ask for your charity while plotting behind your back. They are found in the partner who stands by you, holds you when you cry, and fights beside you when the world tries to break your peace. Hayden is out of our lives forever, and we are moving forward, stronger and closer than we have ever been. That is one wild ride. It really goes to show that sometimes no good deed goes unpunished. The op and his wife tried to do the right thing by giving a friend a place to stay, and he rewarded their kindness by violating their privacy in the worst way possible. The silver lining here is how the couple handled it. Instead of letting a toxic person drive a wedge into their marriage, they communicated, stayed honest with each other, and teamed up to handle the threat together. As for Hayden, he got exactly what he deserved, losing his friends, facing the police, and ending up completely isolated. What do you think about how this situation unfolded? How would you have handled that first moment on the couch when the phone screen popped up? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more Reddit breakdowns, make sure to drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Thank you for watching. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next video.